Lauren Rubin, who's the managing director of Outdoor Media Group, one of the largest outdoor media buyers in the country. Lauren, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here, and we're really excited to be closing out this amazing 3 days with some creative inspiration. I think the big thing too, like as you know, Steve just mentioned, is that we have seen data and technology really fuel innovation and creativity, and we have some great examples to share. One of the things that we've also noticed is that there's just a wide variety of opportunities here. So the opportunities are kind of endless. But before we dive into the examples, I think we can just do some introductions. So Jillian, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jillian Moore. I am the emerging media strategist with Tenuity. Our practice spans digital out-of-home, audio, and gaming as part of emerging media, but really excited to talk to you guys today about some of our creative wins with two of our Unilever brands, Liquid IV as well as Ollie.
Hello, everybody. I am Rodolfo Queiroz. I'm the media director at DOOH. At DOOH, we primarily work with a lot of music clients, such as Universal Music Group and Interscope Records. But we've also done a lot more beauty brands and app-based type products. For our presentation, or at least on our side, we had a couple things with Universal Music Group for U2 and the Beatles.
Awesome. So let's dive in. So the first campaign Jillian's going to be taking us through is Liquid IV. I know it got teased out a little bit by Jeff earlier this week, but we're really excited to get into the details of what this campaign was all about. If you could tell us a little bit more about the strategy behind it, and how your strategy met the objectives of the campaign as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So first I can give some background just on Liquid IV as a client. They sit as part of Unilever's Health and Wellness Collective. So they're a hydration brand. If you guys haven't tried their hydration sticks, it's a powdered formula that you add into your water. As you can see on the creative, 2 times faster hydration than water alone, tons of electrolytes. And this campaign was really, the strategy, first of all, the client's initial goal was just brand awareness. We were able to prove out much more than just brand awareness. The general branding here, the Fuel Your Play campaign, was really about reaching different types of people based on the ways that they play. So I love that Lucy in her presentation talked about different types of consumer profiles. People go on different journeys throughout their days, and really we wanted to be connecting with people no matter what their form of play was. So whether you are visiting an e-scooter charging station, going around town, and that's your form of play, or if you're at the gym and working out is how you like to play, there's a different way for us to connect with each of those audiences. And with out-of-home, it really is meeting users on those daily journeys. So we were really focused on making sure that everyone knows, no matter what their form of play is, Liquid IV is there as a hydration brand to help bring them back after they have, whether that's been exercising, shopping, just dependent on what their preferred form of play was. And we had fun with it. There were a variety of different types of placements, both in and around gyms, golf courses, even event centers. So things like American Airlines Center in Dallas, which we've got some creative for here. I think it's on a different slide, but you can also see this billboard was outside of the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So whether you're just going and visiting some of your favorite stars and moving around town, there was a way for us to be connecting dependent on what your preferred type of play was. In terms of the overarching strategy, general awareness, this was part of a $20 million ad budget. Out-of-home was one piece of that larger strategy. We were also running across audio, both streaming audio and podcasts, doing custom spots with Dak Shepard for Armchair Expert, as well as having an outside lands piece where we were streaming with Twitch and allowing people to actually use an interactive polling feature. So this was part of that overarching strategy, and we really wanted to use out-of-home as a way for us to gain some efficiency, both on a CPM basis, for something that was a really high impact and splashy format. We leveraged a variety of different screen types, but we did have a lot of those very, very large screens that were connecting with people with a variety of different dwell times. So on the next slide, you'll see here, this was outside of the American Airlines Center. Very high dwell time when people are waiting to go and get inside for that show, and that was a way for us to connect with users. I loved what Mark said about the bonus impressions. Because there are so many people going in there, Liquid IV's target audience was absolutely being reached, but there are also people that we may not have thought about as our core consumer profile that were exposed to that messaging with that super high dwell time. And especially when you think about share of voice, people waiting in these lines for a very long time were likely exposed to that messaging more than once, really enforcing that and amplifying that ad recall. So that was definitely a success in terms of the placements that we leveraged, as well as just using a variety of different ways to actually connect with people.
Amazing. And so I know, what were some of the things that really stood out for this campaign? What were some of the things that you did differently? I think, we have an example on the next slide that you can take us through.
Yeah, okay, this one is very exciting. So this was part of the Twitch sponsorship. Liquid IV was the actual sponsor to light up the night at Outside Lands. Yeah, go ahead, play the sizzle reel. And so this was a way where people could actually be, whether they were streaming or tuning in, looking at an interactive
What's going on,
poll
everyone?
and
You're
lighting
watching
up
the
the
Outside
night.
Lands live stream 2022 exclusively on Twitch.tv.
Festival coverage is brought to you by Liquid IV.
For tonight's Liquid IV Light Up the Night poll, we had you guys vote for the color that the trees would be turning on later tonight. Check it out. And it looks like at 37%, you guys voted for watermelon. All my watermelon believers out there really made it happen. The Tropical Punch truthers have not stepped out of the darkness yet and told us how they actually feel.
Pop Liquid IV in my drink and I actually feel like a functioning human right now.
Pop a Liquid IV in, shake that water up, shake that juice up, whatever you got, chug that thing down, and you'll feel like $1 million again.
So I feel like in terms of innovation, one of the things that we really thought about is what is actually out of home. It's more than just billboards, it's more than just EV charging screens. It's anything that you're experiencing while you're on the go. So if you're at a festival and there's actually an opportunity for people to be interacting and choosing the experience that those festival goers are having, it allows them to feel like they're really a part of that experience. You saw from the statistics, we saw great engagement, whether that was in the chat or people posting on their social media about the event. So it was really a way for us to amplify the messaging that we were serving across screens throughout those cities and take it like nationwide and even globally. There are people streaming Outside Lands from across the world, so that I think was one way that we were really able to take our messaging and amplify it across a really unique format in a way that some people might not think of out of home, but is truly out of home.
It was a great use of a variety of out-of-home formats, as well as a number of other formats within the omnichannel experience. So thank you for sharing that example with us. We'll move over to Rodolfo, who is going to take us through a slightly different approach. It was a little less of a variety of formats, right? But a great use of dynamic creative. So if you can shed some light on what this campaign was about and how you use digital out-of-home.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wish there was as much strategy as Jillian and her agency had with their client, but usually in the music space, it's a little bit more of a vanity pitch in terms of like having to be a little bit just out there in a given area or a market. I would say with this specific campaign, Universal Music Group was looking to do a re-release of the 20th anniversary for All That You Can Leave Behind. With this album, they wanted to display multiple lyrics throughout the city. Originally, they wanted to do something a little bit more guerrilla format, which was wall posting, but we kind of gave them the idea that it might be more cost effective to do actually something more digital based in terms of out of home. So with these lyrics that they had throughout the city, they were all based on a song, and the song had something to do with either temperature or a day or a night. So for instance, I believe some of the songs that they utilized was a beautiful day. If it was a sunny day outside, the creative would trigger to show a beautiful day lyrics, as well as I believe that, I'm really bad with YouTube music, to be honest, but I believe that All That You Can, or Walk On was more about a night type of a approach. So once it was nighttime, it would show that creative. Windy Day was something along the windy lyrics. But we had worked with JC Decode to be able to have all those triggers occur when that type of creative was used for that temperature or day.
Great. And then the next creative example for the Beatles retrospective White Album is slightly different, not exactly a digital out-of-home campaign, but a unique play and an innovative campaign play using out-of-home. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So, another type of approach here is that the client would just want it to be something to wear on Sunset, right? Sunset Strip is one of the more popular areas of Los Angeles. So they wanted to be able to show the iconic whiteness of the White Album, and as well as be able to display the faces of the Beatles onto a billboard. So I had pitched them the idea of utilizing, I believe it was MMT's Visine backlight vinyl, so that during the day it shows one type of messaging, and at night it would show something else. Typically with the digital billboard, you would be looking at something of like 100% SOV, but utilizing this type of approach, it definitely became more cost effective. And I believe we have a video that could show it as well as how it worked. If it plays.
So how long did this campaign run for, and what was the overall response from the client?
Oh, yeah, it ran for only 2 weeks, actually, and it was like about a 6 to 8 week time frame of planning. But the client was very pleased. I mean, it got a lot of great reception. In fact, it was included in a documentary for the rock and roll billboards of Sunset. So it really got a lot of good traction. The client was just pleased to be able to have the two messagings on just one.
Yep.
The video itself is freezing, so we'll have to skip it.
That's okay.
No worries.
Great. And this also won an Obie Award, right?
Yeah, this one was a silver Obie.
Very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So for the next campaign, we're going to be talking about Ollie. I love that we're sticking with some, more cheeky brands. And tell us a little bit more about how this campaign came about, the formats that you use, the strategy behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ollie's Big Vagina Energy campaign was really a play for us to make sure that we were turning that dreaded aisle of shame in stores into something that was actually exciting and fun. As you can see, we used a mix of both traditional and digital formats with bus wraps. We really tried to break through the clutter with really beautiful creative. Ollie is known for their packaging. They do wellness supplements, specifically vitamins in the gummy form, and just even having it on your counter, looks beautiful. So we really wanted to recreate that with the actual creative that we brought into market, both on the traditional side as well as the digital. There were a variety of formats, as I mentioned. We had bus wraps, car wraps. We even had some rideshare media, in-car tablets, as well as things like urban panels and bus shelters. And this campaign was a success in a lot of ways. Again, their primary goal with incorporating out-of-home was to have an awareness play. But we were actually able to leverage media mix modeling for this and back into not only a $3 return on ad spend, but the overarching campaign drove a 25% sales increase for them. So it was a huge success in terms of their initial foray into out-of-home. And from there, we were able to iterate. And Ollie actually is currently now in market with a new out-of-home campaign because of all the success that they saw from that. As you can see, this creative was definitely a challenge that was brought to us. The client had this branding that they wanted to put into market, and we wanted to be sure that as their agency partner, we were supporting them and being true to their brand and true to their messaging. So we really had to work and lean on our partner relationships to make sure that we were pushing to get approvals for them, and really, work through all of the nuances that come with specific geographies, especially in the South and the Bible Belt in Atlanta. We had a lot of partners that did not want to run this messaging. But at the end of the day, we wanted to go to bat for Ollie and make sure that we were putting our best foot forward and really showing them that we were there to help amplify their brand. So as I mentioned, it was a huge success, both in terms of awareness. We saw a 10.4% lift in target audience awareness, but also a 4% lift in terms of general awareness in those markets. I loved what Mark said about things performing and having bonus impressions, because even though we were reaching our target audience, we were also reaching general audiences in those markets that Ollie might not have thought to go after initially. So definitely a huge success in terms of awareness, as well as even on their Amazon storefront. They saw a 300% increase in Amazon page views, which was really cool to see. So if you go to the next slide, we can look at what the next iteration of Ollie was and kind of how we evolved from there. So as I mentioned, with those traditional formats, you're really working with partners for production and installation costs. And that was something that took us a lot of lead time. And while we did love the things like the bus wraps, which we did also include in the Happy New You campaign, we tried to take an even more digital approach, leveraging boards that had really cool formats and splashy placements in cities, that we loved how it aligned with the color scheme. So as you can see, look at them, look at us. This placement was beautiful for Ollie, but it also had things that were incorporated in that natural environment that allowed it to pop even further. We also incorporated some charging stations. So again, aligning them with that sustainability and really sponsoring free charging and giving a value exchange to the people that were actually seeing the ads and wanted to charge their vehicles. So huge success for Ollie. We're really excited about it. And currently this is in market. We're running a brand lift study for it, and excited to see what those results are going to be.
Very exciting. What markets is it currently running in?
It's running in multiple markets. Atlanta is one of their primary ones. So these placements, these three are specifically in Atlanta. But we have expanded even further beyond that. And now that we've proven out the efficacy of out-of-home in individual markets, we can really blow it up from there and hit even further people.
Amazing. This was something that I think stood out a little bit too in terms of I can play the video, but how you started to incorporate soft motion in video, right? So it's like adjusting your creative
Definitely.
Based on the format that you're using.
Yeah, our creative team, we've really been trying to put together some best practices for our out-of-home clients. And one of the things that we've noticed is the more that we can incorporate motion, the more that we can incorporate video, we have seen that that actually engages people further. So this particularly, Ollie, like I mentioned, they were super colorful. We wanted to use soft motion with the color to have kind of a little bit of a gradient pattern. So when you're walking by, you see the actual ads, but there's something that's a little bit more splashy about it that really draws you in and says, hey, there's something happening here, your eyes should be looking at it. So we continue to pitch soft motion whenever we can. We have a great creative team, so really excited to roll that out for some more clients as well.
Okay, thank you so much. So that brings us to our last example, which again is a unique take on video creative outside of using a traditional digital out-of-home display. Rodolfo, can you give us a little bit more background on how this came to be, the strategy behind it, and if you see, Boston Ballet utilizing more out-of-home in the future?
Yeah, so the Boston, the Boston Ballet was looking to promote the Nutcracker, and they had a bunch of video assets that they were using for display online, and they wanted to find a way to utilize it through out-of-home. There's always a suggestion of being able to use those full motion videos on your traditional digital out-of-home units, but in terms of getting that 100% SOV, we made a different type of take, which was utilizing projections throughout the city. So we had 5 projector teams within the city of Boston showing off the Nutcracker creative in terms of like it's all video, and as well having call to action to be able to purchase to make that sale. But let's go ahead and see how it comes off. Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. It was just in so many high foot traffic areas of Boston to be able to display that, and at night to really shine and show. Obviously, it's a little bit different than what you would have out of a programmatic type of approach, but I still think that it kind of gives that same type of exposure and display as to what a video or digital ad would do.
Great. Thank you both so much. Really amazing work, and we're so excited to see what your brands, put out in the future.
Yeah. Well, thank you, guys.
That's really cool stuff. Anybody have any questions about creative choices?
Okay, Rodolfo, I'd like to ask you about the Boston, because I'm actually looking at projection right now for clients. In Boston, is it permitted? Do you have to, are they allow the permitting of the projections?
Yeah, so there are two different approaches for it. We were working with a partner that had permitted units in terms of like allowing walls to be able to have that video display, and in some cases being able to play audio. Boston Ballet didn't feel like they needed audio, so it was just strictly video, or I'm sorry, just the creative itself. That being said, that does kind of open more options as opposed to if you need to have audio to be included.
And have you come across other markets where you've tried this and they don't allow the permitting, so you have to be ready to punt and move whenever you're told to move?
Yeah, all the time.
Okay.
It's very, very common, and in that case, what we do in terms of preparing our clients to be able to utilize this median is that you give us essentially 5 options that you're looking at, and we're going to try to be able to land at least 3 of them. And if we need to move, we have the backup secondary options for them.
Cool, thanks.
Jillian, this is questions for you. The Ollie campaign, always love the creative vibrance and love how we've talked a lot about data and measurement side of things, but how's the agency starting to embrace data in real time to dictate what creative works, what creative doesn't, and then also performance, because I know you guys are a big performance-based agency. Are you, with an Ollie client, are you able to go in and say, okay, in these markets, we're seeing highest indexing towards this audience, but then when the creative goes live, that performance increases or decreases, you can utilize different creative products or target audiences? Is that the next step and phase for y'all?
I think in terms of creative, it really depends on what format you're talking about. So we really try and look at dwell times and what the experience is of the consumer moving through that space. So for the Volta stations, the reason why soft motion worked really well is because that's a format where people are passing by. They're probably going to see it when they're going into the store, and they're probably going to see it when they're leaving the store. So we really try and focus on the loop time there. I think in terms of performance, we're really all about market-specific approaches when we can be, because it's a lot easier for us to isolate what the relevant lift is when we're looking at a specific market. So like I mentioned with Atlanta, we can go in and we can be looking at their analytics data and say, okay, we launched this creative in this market during this time frame. What was the baseline before that? What was the result after it? So in terms of the media mix modeling, that's really our analytics team going in and looking at the baseline compared to that lift for the specific market. I think you can look at things on a national level. I think that a lot of times requires like bringing in a third-party partner, and because we do have a really robust analytics team, we try and leverage their insights wherever possible.
Could both of you talk about that question of loop time with publicly displayed video? Because you had the Liquid IV unit over the arena that was running where you had longer dwell time for people. And then with the Boston Ballet, what are the discussions around loop time, optimal loop time in different situations? How are you guys actually thinking about publicly viewed video?
I try and make it as easy for people as possible to understand the messaging. So assuming that people have a lower attention span, trying to fit within that sweet spot. I think the reason why video worked really well for that American Airlines center placement is because people were waiting in line for so long. We really had the ability there to leverage a longer format. But like you could see with the Hollywood Walk of Fame example, we chose a static placement there because the traffic is moving by. Whether you're in a car, you're only looking at for a shorter period of time. So wherever possible, trying to really humanize it and think about what's my experience going to be if I'm passing that ad? Am I going to be able to understand what the video messaging of the American Airlines centerpiece would have been if we had run that on a billboard? I mean, roadside video problems aside, I think it really has to do with what's your experience going to be? How are you as a human going to be able to understand and especially remember that messaging? So really, if you're working with a static unit, I try and keep messaging as simple as possible. Focus on one idea per creative and make sure that that message is very, very easy to consume in a short period of time. If you do have a placement where you have the luxury of people waiting around and actually being exposed to that unit for a longer period of time, then you can talk more about a 15-second, maybe even a 30-second spot. But I really think that you have to think about it from a person perspective and really focus on us just as human beings.
Rodolfo, what was the thing? How long were the loops for the ballet, for the Boston Ballet, and how were you guys thinking about it?
It was a 30-second loop. To them, they
It's
were
pretty long.
Yeah. It seemed like they wanted to have as much content as to what they had from previous showings, but they also wanted to be able to have a good enough time for people to see the call to action, which was the website to be able to purchase the tickets. And in terms of like what we would recommend to clients, it really depends on what they're really trying to display. We've had a similar type of execution with Afterpay for New York Fashion Week, where they wanted to at least have a minute and a half of a recap of what they were doing for the New York Fashion Week. So in some cases, I would say it might be a little bit of overkill, but what they were trying to essentially execute, that was the reason why they needed to have it that long.
Well, listen, thank you guys. Rodolfo, thank you for making me feel so old. I was there at the record store the day the White Album dropped and bought it. So, and I had those, because those 4 images of the Beatles, they were color glossies that came in the original double album. They were on my wall for years. So I'm going to grab my walker and leave now, but thanks, guys, very much.
Thank you, guys.